Welcome back to our channel Text Master. Previously we discussed the five methods. Method 6 is test the capacitor by continuously test mode. In digital multimeter and analog voltmeter, the continuity test mode can also be used whether the capacitor is good, open or short. To do so, follow the simple instruction below. Disconnect the power supply and remove the capacitor from the circuit board. Fully discharge the capacitor using a resistor. Rotate the knob and set the multimeter in continuity test mode. Make a constant of the voltage probe multimeter to anode and common black probe to the cathode terminal of the capacitor. If the multimeter shows a sign of probe continuity, beep sound or LED light and suddenly stop and show an open line, it means the capacitor is in good condition. If the multimeter does not show a continuity sign with beep or LED, it means the capacitor is open. If the multimeter LED lights on and make a continuous beep sound, it means the capacitor is short and it should be replaced with a new one. Continuity test mode. Method 7. Test capacitor by visual apparent checking. It is the basic approach to determine the defective capacitor without a multimeter by observing the apparent sign appearing on it. The capacitor is failed and damaged if you find any of following condition. A bulging top vent of capacitor. The top vent of electrolytic capacitor is shape of K, T or X are the weak point made to release the pressure during the failure of a capacitor to avoid serious damage to the surrounding and any other component connected near to it. If you find a bulging top of the capacitor, it is the electrolytic discharge black, white, orange color which depend on the electrolytic material. The capacitor release a gas pressure during failure and breaker the top vent of the capacitor. So there is a faulty capacitor. Pictures: flat top, bulging top, bad capacitor. Bulging bottom and lifted case of capacitor. If the produced gas pressure does not break the top vent of capacitor during failure or cause the bottom and pushes the rubber which make the bottom bulge and lift the case. So 10 microfarad capacitor is 25 volt. So the flat bottom of capacitor. Here is the picture of a perfect. Here is the picture difference. Show the good capacitor which have a always flat bottom and the bad capacitor have a top and bottom is bulging bottom and lifted case. Test SMD ceramic capacitor. If you find the following sign on ceramic tiny assembly capacitor, they are faulty and need to be changed with the correct one. Broken or cracks in the casing, damage or any sign of burnt casing, a hole in the casing, broken terminal. Traditional method to test a check a capacitor. This is the method 8 and it is our final method to check a capacitor. Completely focus on lecture so you will be able to test a capacitor in a very efficient and a secure way. So the safety is first important to check a capacitor. So first of all, our safety is very important to do in small electronic works. Not recommend for everyone but professionals only. Please be careful to do this practice as it is dangerous. Make sure that you are professional electrical engineer, electrician, and you really know that you are doing something hazardous. Please follow the safety precautions and warning before apply this method. This is only applicable in an emergency where replacing capacitor with the proper value is important, and there are no other option to check the damaged capacitor because serious damages may occur during this practice. If you are not sure because serious damage may occur during this practice, follow the other option. Alternative method to troubleshoot the capacitor. Suppose you want to check the capacitor, for example fan capacitor, room air cooler capacitor, or tiny capacitor in a circuit board PCB board. Warning and safety precautions for testing a capacitor by method 8. For proper safety, use a 12 to 24 volt DC source. In case of both polar and non-polar capacitor with a 1 kilo ohm, 100 kilo ohm and 5 to 50 watt resistors. The resistor should be connected in series with battery and capacitor positive terminal. This way it will reduce the excessive current while charging the capacitor. In case of absence of DC source like batteries, the high rated capacitor, fan capacitor 3.5 microfarad, 120 to 30 or 400 watt, you may use 120 30 AC, but you have to connect a series of resistor. Stay 1 kilo ohm, 100 kilo ohm, 550 watts. Connect between capacitor and for subsequent precautions, you always, if you reverse engineering a circuit, you should always remember that to discharge a capacitor, because when you don't discharge a capacitor and your hand is mistakenly touch the circuit, so you have a high shocked. So this is against our safety precautions. This way it will reduce the charging and discharging current. Here is the step-by-step tutorial on how you may check capacitor by this method. Disconnect the suspected capacitor from the power supply to make sure at least one lead of the capacitor is disconnected from the PCB board. Make sure that capacitor is fully discharged. Connect two separate leads to the capacitor terminal. Now safely connect these leads to 24 volt DC to 230 volt AC supply for a very short period, about 1/4 second. For a short time where the voltage rise the source voltage. Remove safety leads from the tender AC supply. Now short the capacitor terminal. Please be careful. Do not that and make sure that you have worn safely goggles. If it make a strong spark, the capacitor is good. If it's make a weak or no spark at all, then it is a defective capacitor. You should have to change it immediately with a new one. And the safety precautions is not applicable, so you should avoid to change capacitor, check capacitor. Note, keep in mind that a polar capacitor should not be connected to AC supply. On the other hand, a non-polar capacitor can be attached to the DC power supply because they are back-to-back electrolytic capacitor as well. Non-capacitor block DC but let pass the AC, but still but it will charge with the DC supply source until it reaches the terminal voltage level. In short, non-polar capacitor can be operated on both AC and DC supplies, while polar capacitor only operate on DC. For more details, you will also see other lectures. So, this is a traditional method which is used by electricians and professionals. So, if you are a student or a beginner, so you should avoid to check the capacitor like this. I hope you will understand and keep in mind the safety rules. Not recommend, see the instruction in tutorial. So in our tutorial the method is also written. So we discuss 8 method one by one. So we overview method 2. So in method 1, take up a digital multimeter. In method 2, we discuss that check a capacitor using analog multimeter. In method 3, we discuss checking capacitor using multimeter in the capacitance mode. In method 4, testing a capacitor by simple voltmeter. In method 5, test the capacitor by measuring the value of time constant. In method 6, test the capacitor by continuity test mode. So in method 7, test the capacitor by visual apparent checking. In method 8, this is the traditional and more suitable method. And you always charge the capacitor and also check the voltage of capacitor, and this is a very efficient method, but you won't practice and be careful about safety precautions. So this is all about our capacitor checking methods. So we will doing inshallah in our next video with our new topic. So I hope you will all understand. If you have any query and problem, you will comment on our comment box. And if you have any query and you want to install in a capacitor, if you want to install a capacitor in your circuit, so kindly you will contact our team text master. So the